Hello everyone, this is Bradley. So here's a new series of fundamental tutorials, and I have even made a new playlist for it called the AN-I&C, which stands for Animation Node Instancing and Collections. On one side, they are important, as many people are asking these questions. On the other side, there are various topics that you can discuss with these two terms. For example, instancing collection as a whole, instancing from collection, instancing a collection while keep each object independent from each other, and so on and so forth. One thing I want to remind you is that the geometry node is coming out in Blender Master, and it certainly changed the workflow of instancing in the future. But it's far from completion, so I don't know how it will look like at the end of the day. Meanwhile, I still think instancing with animation nodes will be useful if you're working with motion graphics and other things. And thus, this playlist is created for you to learn. So let's start with the most basic questions, instancing collection as a whole. So here we have a very bizarre looking snowman. I started with a cube and with a subdivision surfaces, and there is a circular plane with a solidify modifier, so you can procedurally change all this thickness. So here, if I don't consider these two objects that has modifier, but only these three primitive objects, a cone, icosphere, and a torus. If I would like to instance this group of objects, then I can control J and to join this object and then instance this single object as a whole. And this has been discussed in my other tutorials like instancing animation nodes. So this is quite basic. But since we are having all this kind of modifier, if we ever use Control J methods, then original primitive objects will lose their modifier. For example, the cube lost its subdivision surfaces, it becomes cube. And another thing is all these kind of torus and icosphere has inherited the solidify modifier that was originally on this circular plane only. So we have to hit a lot of Control Z to revert everything back. So to keep or there's another method is you apply all this modifier before and then you join that. And then you join that as a whole. So now we get a single snowman, you can instance that. But all these methods are not what I am looking for, because if you ever apply the modifier, then you lose all this kind of proceduralness. I suppose this is not what you want. So I think the only option that's left on the table is to instance a collection, and today's topic is discuss how to do that. Actually, this is extremely easy. What you actually need to do is just to select this collection, right click and goes to instance to scene. So now we're having an empty object. So if you goes to the green panels, you can see this is actually an empty object. But what actually does the trick is if you goes to the object panel and goes to instance, and you can see it's actually hit on this instance on collection. But if you change other things, it goes back to empty and it becomes completely useless, because an empty does not have vertices or face, but it can only instance collection. And if you shift deduplicate these empties, then your instance multiple collection and so on and so forth. So this is the principle of what we're going to do in animation nodes. So let's go to animation nodes. So we'll still keep this empty object, and I'm going to use the distributed matrices in order to generate a grid, an object instancer node. So if I have a grid of 3 times 3, which is 9 objects, then I link these matrices to the instances, so I generate 9 objects, and then I'm going to output these locations using object matrix output. Put the matrices into matrices. If I select this empty object, so now I'm actually replicating all this kind of 9 empties. If they are still not instancing all this kind of collection, is because I haven't taken this copy 4 objects. So as soon as you take these 4 objects with these 4 nodes, and boom, we have all these kind of 9 snowmans scattered. And you can definitely add many more things related to matrices, for example, offset matrices and points, distance, forth. so that if you would like to make kind of motion graphic animation or variability or other things that you can potentially play with. This is kind of thing that you can potentially think of. But this is all about it. So I think it's kind of very simple and straightforward. One thing I want to remind you is about the random color, because if you would like to instance a lot of objects with random color, you always need to think about this thing. So you just need to go to the original collection, and let's firstly disable this animation on the collection. So looking at all these kind of objects, let's add a materials. Let's name that as random color. And I'm going to hit the Control L to get a so makes links in materials. So now all this object has a random color material. So if I go to shaders, I just need to have a object info node which outputs a random, and you put a color ramp. And let's take a emission. Change the type into constant. You just make kind of whatever random color that you can play with. For example, make it red. The other one, make it kind of orange. And black, make it kind of blue. So whatever color that you wish to have. So now at this moment, so you just have got this kind of random color. And if you're trying to look at animation on the collection, each different object will essentially have the random colors along with that. The issue is that because this is Blender ways of instancing and Blender shader ways to generate all this kind of index, animation node has no control about all this random color. So there's no control over them. It's just I don't know what to say. So this is about it. Another thing is that you can disable the collection. It's okay. You can still render that with all these kind of things. Let's take the cameras. And then you can render them, and you can see all these kind of objects. But if you try to disable this in viewport, and then you try to hit the renders, then you see nothing. So this is the thing you need to be cautious. It's possible to disable the collection, but you cannot disable this screen icon or camera icon. Otherwise, it just won't work. This instancing won't work at all. Okay, so this is one more thing that you need to be cautious with. And I think this is all about it. I finished this tutorial, and I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I'll probably see you next time. Bye bye.